Hey there, and welcome to Money and You. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. My search for more fulfilling work led me to career and business coaching, where I stumbled upon a game-changing discovery. Money issues often start with our mindset and habits. You see, our relationship with money is the key to overcoming those frustrating financial obstacles. As an entrepreneur, coach, and problem solver, I'm passionate about helping you create a great relationship with money. Because, turns out, that's the foundation for a limit-free life. Each week on Money and You, I speak with amazing guests about all things money, mindset, practical tips, and everything in between. We're here to give you new insights, education, and empowerment so money can be one of your favorite relationships. So join us for some lively conversations and let's transform your financial life together. Hello, and welcome to the Money and You show. This is a very intentional episode. This is our first one of the new year, 2026, and I really want to kick it off with something that is not about your relationship with money. It's not about business planning, it's not about entrepreneurship, and it's not about a lot of the things that we will talk at length about during the rest of the year. This is something and someone who came into my life fall of this past year and really made me think. And I love what she's doing, and I think we should all be thinking about this. So without taking any more time, I'm going to introduce Deborah Pardes, who is redefining play as a strategic life skill, not a break from work, but a foundation for better choices. Through the Playful Society, she designs intentional, in real-life play experiences that help solopreneurs and leaders regulate their nervous systems, expand their decision-making capacity, and build lives that are financially sustainable, creatively alive, and deeply human. And this is so perfect for the time we're in, because as we access the non-human for a lot of our businesses and our lives, Deborah's coming in with something that we so need. And Deborah, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this because you just opened my eyes so much this year. And a couple other things that happened, like I started playing Mahjong and I started just interacting in this playful way that maybe, I hadn't spent that much time doing. And you came along, it was a little bit synchronistic, and started talking about playing. And so I would love for you to share with the audience kind of what you started talking to me about earlier in the fall. I don't really remember when it was now.
Yeah, I forget when we actually met, but I know I was about 3 or 4 months into this project by then, and I had some vocabulary around it. I think everyone can relate to when you're working on a project, you don't really know when to talk about it, when to keep it kind of close to your chest. You're developing language. They always talk about what's your elevator pitch, what's your log line, especially in Los Angeles. But I feel very organic around talking about this because most of my life I've participated in life a lot, but I've also observed. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and I think as the youngest you watch a lot. And I think as a performer, which I was until my early 30s, I was a singer-songwriter, and I would be on stage doing the delightful thing that singer-songwriters do. But in doing that, I also felt an urge to connect to the audience more. I didn't want to have a huge distance. So I did a lot of interplay with the audience. But in the years that came after that, I did a couple of very interesting things. One of them was noticing that some of the work I had done was inspired by literature. So I created a nonprofit that connected songs about books to low-level readers. And that took up 10 years of my life. But in that time, I started doing presentations and I started talking to large groups and I started getting very comfortable with the sort of subject matter of, how do we reward ourselves in general around achievement. In this case, it was, I learned how to read. How do I reward myself? How do I make time to read a book? And is that leisure or is that in self-improvement? Is that investing in myself? And I just started noticing the interplay between our minds and our reward systems and how we say, oh, it's Saturday morning, I'm not going to clean the house, I'm going to read a book. And does that make you feel better afterwards, or do you think I just wasted 2 hours? So I'm fascinated with our own internal clock around how do we reward ourselves. And some people go, let's go to dinner, let's go to Las Vegas, let me buy myself a new car or a new pair of sneakers. But I think we live in a time when everything's kind of a special event. And I think, looking at the books like Atomic Habits, it talks about the micro things we do. But I want to soften that and just say that as I've worked into some different career moves, I've noticed that it's little moments that should be rewarding and not big, like, let's go on a cruise, honey. So that's kind of the impetus of the Playful Society. I spent many years doing corporate work as a playful person, I would say, doing DEI and social and sexual harassment training, but in the guise of let's play about this, let's do scenarios, let's connect and be human together and break free from our routine, meet on a weekend with, retreats are always double-edged swords because you really don't want to be there. But when you are there, what are you going to do? And if you do it in a straight line with a PowerPoint in front of you, you're going to sink in your chair and disappear. So to engage people, there's a lot of incredible people out there that have written tons of books about facilitating groups and bringing warmth and bringing what they call icebreakers. And I dabbled in that for a long time. But in this last summer, when things were shifting with another job I had, I thought, how do I want to spend the rest of my life, really? And I decided that I want to stay in touch with what happens when people are having a good time. But I don't want to be on stage. I want to be in the circle. So the Playful Society really is about realigning priorities for people, helping them integrate play into their everyday lives, defining what play is, and building a society full of play, which is why there's 2 L's in playful and not one. And for me, it's a huge experiment. And Michelle, you're intimate with this since I'm working with you as full disclosure as a coach who's helping me do the financing of this and build the investor deck and working with people to get me a space that will hold this idea. So where I'm at right now is just a lot of energy to build this society. Members-based club, if you want to get down to the brass tacks of it. But what it really is helping people shift how they prioritize play in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love this. I loved it from the minute you told me about it because, for one thing, you're so passionate about it and you care about it a great deal. I mean, it's a really heartfelt effort that you're putting into this, which is frankly what it takes. This is a unique concept, and it's been very interesting to watch the concept develop too, because it's a great example of something that is somewhat of a wonderful vague idea, and then to translate it into reality is not an easy thing to take on. So I think you've been very courageous in what you're trying to do and also very dedicated. So I feel very confident about this. And I also think it's beautiful because, you mentioned early on that as adults, we sort of stopped playing at some point pretty early on in our adulthood. And and the games are coming back. We see a lot of, especially, groups of women playing Mahjong. I mean, Mahjong seemed like a weird thing to me, and I had no interest in it. But my friends were all playing, and, they would ask me to play, and I'd be like, Mahjong. But then I started mostly because everybody I knew was playing, and if I wasn't going to play Mahjong, I wasn't going to have any friends anymore. And so I started, and I realized the value of sitting around a table with a group of people, and it's a changing group, and the conversations you have while you play, the relaxation you feel, the focus that you have, and there's some strategy. You feel like your brain is doing something it doesn't normally do, so that feels good for you. Mm-hmm. But overall, you leave and you feel really, you feel different than you do doing other things, whether even if it's, taking care of your kids or at work. I mean, it's a different feeling that this playing gives you that, I just think we have forgotten. We have forgotten as adults how good that feels, how relaxing it is. A lot of the anxiety goes away. You're in the moment. And, we really need more of that right now when, for so many reasons. But
I don't think it's actually institutionalized enough because you have to be a major self-starter to say, I'm going to figure this out. Where is being played? Where's pickleball being played, for that
Yeah.
matter, or
Yeah.
something physical like that? But I've been studying a lot about. I mean, I've been watching TED Talks and reading journals and really trying to educate myself about what has happened in the past. And I'm also looking at how everyone's obsessed with optimizing systems because AI is saying you should do that. But what that doesn't do is to change the state of people. So we are human, and maybe we're making the world more efficient, but how are we going to live inside that efficient world? What's going to be our role? And how are we going to sort of figure out the systems that work for us? Systems are assuming that we're regulated and that we're connected and that we're happy, but we're not. And I think
Yeah.
that's really something I'm studying a lot about. And how can playful at the baseline just be a place where you know about it? Oh, I'm going to go here to take my Wednesdays and play some games, but taking that Wednesday evening and bringing it through to the rest of your life as a sort of a mentality, a shift, is really what I'm interested in nurturing.
Yeah, and it's great. And ever since I met you, you hear people talking about these things. I know I've told you about a friend of my daughter's she's in her 30s. She was telling me how she wishes there was a place where she could go that wasn't a bar, that where you could meet people, and do something different. And so I think what you have in mind lands with a lot of people because I mean, and this, all the stats on this, but we do have a loneliness epidemic. We do have a world, while you can meet people, virtually on social media, it's not as satisfying, obviously, as being with people and connecting with
Mhm.
people, but it's hard to do. If you don't want to go to a bar, I mean, where do you go? Where do you meet people? And even if you meet them, what is playing games is such a great way to get to know somebody. That's something that I didn't really recognize until
Mhm.
recently.
I just heard a quote from a football coach. I'm forgetting who it was. I'm not sure if you sent me this or somebody saying that, you can work for someone for a year, but you play with them for an hour and you know who
Oh,
they
I
are.
did say that. I forget
Yeah,
where I heard
I
it.
loved it. I think it was a football coach, but
Yeah.
I think that coming back to this idea of the in person versus digital. Digital has stolen so much from us. There's no friction in digital. It's just like you look at us. We're like, I'm trying to touch your cheeks and squeeze them, but I can't. It's like it's impossible. But I think that part of the reality of being involved with somebody physically is that you trust them faster. They're in your face, honestly. You have a richer experience with them. But I think also part of what I'm fascinated by about, and I'm not a huge game player, by the way, just full disclosure. I don't know a lot of games, but I love the culture of games as a gateway to connection for sure. But games help you to negotiate things and to deal with conflict and to deal with loss, to deal with leadership, to be vulnerable, to collaborate. If I was running a company with 5,000 people, I would make every single one of them be a part of some kind of game culture inside the organization, just so that we have these beautiful gardens we grow with this kind of vocabulary. I mean, you can also use another metaphor of like this laboratory where you're not making deals with the clients outside the company. You're working within the organization to work out some of your behaviors, some of your instincts, some of your reactions. And I think these are really going to play into the world that we can actually literally design.
Yeah, and I mean, in an ideal scenario, what would you envision for this? Like, what is your?
Yeah, I have a very ideal scenario, which I'm so clear that this is why I'm so stuck on this idea of like, hey Deb, why don't you play games at a bar for once a week and just call it the Playful Society? My vision is not to replace the wonderful network of games that are happening in cafes and bars and community centers and churches and temples and country clubs. Those are all literally places you play games, right? I want a Playful Society space where the laboratory are the people inside the space playing games, but the structure is holding a more of an incubator culture where people can come in the evenings and for sure take master classes to get good at one game, but also work within a framework of more of an outside the boxness of games. How do I bring game into my marriage? How do I bring game into my sales pitch? How do I bring game into my mental health? And doing more incubator culture stuff, like a laboratory for where fun and games mean expansion of a person's life and their abilities. So, I'm looking right now for a space where I can build this very warm living room, dining room experience where there's tables and chairs and softness and good lights and ergonomically perfect. And of course, there's food and drink, but only we're not going to do with the health department, of course, the things that's possible. But but it's it's there for playing games, but it's there to house a society built on inquiring about the life of play, and not once removed by the scholars telling us or the game facilitators out there, working with IBM and their employees. That's happening. That's a healthy culture. I'm talking about the solopreneur who's just working on their own. I'm talking about the mom who needs a break. I'm talking about the kid who's not kid. This is 18 plus, but someone who's perhaps in college who has social skills that are really weak, and they're learning a little bit more about who they are by playing, a social game at Playful once a week, and they're getting their confidence back, or they're building their confidence for the first time. So my vision is that it's a programmed space where you walk in anytime you want to play a game, 100%. But the evenings are more curated for expansion of ideas. And when I'm there, I'm not being a floor master trying to help make sure people are fine. I'm there doing research and partnering with organizations that are in desperate need of play. I think about veterans. I think about rehab. I think about all the mental health facilities out there. Not that we're going to serve them in our space, but that we can partner with them in working on projects and even perhaps getting funding to do more investigating around a play as an integration where they add a line out of their budget every year. They're going to bring in this particular kind of play. Maybe it's more motor skills, maybe it's more social, maybe it's something else. But the space is a place. Mm-hmm. The home for expansion of where play fits into the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I love that. And I've also had a lot of people just say, wow, I wish I had people I could play with.
Right.
I don't have friends who are playing Mahjong, but I'd like to learn. Or, I keep using Mahjong because it's like
what you're doing. Yeah.
Because that's what I'm doing. But there's so many things, and, there's so many games, and some of what you're talking about isn't necessarily a board game. I mean, I've been to a couple of your events where, you have very fun, icebreakers, like you call them. And so there's so much, it just all makes you, recognize this other person in yourself that you may have forgotten, for one thing, mm-hmm. and just enjoy. It's so important for us to be enjoying our lives, and sometimes it feels like everything's designed to kind of prevent that.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly social media these days is not enjoyable. I mean, there's so many things going on. The news isn't enjoyable. I mean, there's so many things trying to really disrupt our equilibrium and our nervous systems. And this has a profoundly good impact, I think, on your nervous system.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about nervous systems. I think that a lot of people don't just have dysregulation, and their nervous systems are kind of being attacked by the pressure of life, finances, the wars, everything.
Right.
But I think that there's such micro movements we can make to change that. And I also have to walk my own talk, and I'll tell you what I mean by that, because during COVID we use this word pivot a lot. People pivoted. They pivoted their companies, right? I think it's a real invitation for us to talk about when do we course correct and pivot on a daily basis with a person in a conversation or in a relationship or an idea for a company that's not working, or you're missing an ingredient for a dinner. What are you going to do? How are you going to be nimble and change that? All these things are part of games.
Yes.
And I feel like I've had warm-ups and icebreakers that I've done that haven't worked. In fact, I'm pretty hypercritical of what I've done so far that I don't think has worked. And people are being, I'm putting together a facilitator's manual so I can train people to do what I do. But I also feel like what I'm learning and putting together that manual is, what does it mean to be too enthusiastic versus just right? What does it mean to, opting out is incredibly important for people. How do you make a quiet person feel not put on the spot? What if someone is not particularly creative? Why would you put them in a room where they have to create an idea? I feel like it's coming back to me as a challenge for Playful as an organization on a daily basis to make sure we're taking suggestions, that we're learning from people, that we're asking questions. Not that we are going to move on every suggestion, but that we want to create a culture that we want to nurture as well. If we don't walk the talk, how can we ask somebody else to take their behavior in a game and shift it? And someone else brought something up recently about what is competition and when is it healthy and when it's not healthy. What if you have mixed people and some people just want to play?
Yeah.
I've been fooling around with this idea of like it's all fun and games until someone gets their eye poked out. But the idea of it's all fun and games, right? And I feel like, the Playful Society as a name is pretty overt. It's pretty on the nose. So I've been playing with a logo that's PFS, with the small f. So what is it? Oh, it's a Playful Society. It's all fun and games, but it's just we don't make you feel like you have to play, but it's a society that's, it sort of engenders in you a sense of, I think play is important enough to show up. I might not want to play. I might want to sit there and read a book. And that's something I'm thinking about.
I love that, actually, because, if it can be an escape for you, but not something where you feel pressure. I mean, I think that's what we want. We want to take a little break from life and go into a room like that and not feel, well, some people do want the pressure. Some people want to be pulled out of their comfort zone, and that's great. And then other people would rather just like, can I sit next to you and watch you play? I mean, and I think a place where everything is okay like that is great for people. And you're not going to find that many places,
You don't. Yeah.
But, back to this whole idea of the pivot, it really made me think because, for one thing, if you can go to a space like that, calm your nervous system down, and money is a perfect subject area that we can be, in a major stress about money and go in there, play for a couple hours, get our creative juices flowing a little bit. And, as you're playing, you're right, you're coming up with strategy, then you're, at least in Mahjong, you're pivoting to a new strategy when you see it's not working. And it's so transferable to what you can do with your own finances. And we can feel so stuck and so scared. And then you take a couple hour break like that and you kind of rewire your brain a little, and you can come out with some, I think, pretty simple ways to pivot how you're thinking about your own money situation, and also to take some, create some new strategies. It's very, very transferable for business, for money, for life, relationship problems. Any problems can be solved in a space like that.
Yeah.
And, I think that's another really important thing. You go in, you forget your problems for a couple hours, and you come out with some new ideas. And not that that's what it's about, but I love that as a potential.
But let me ask you a question, because, we all have life schedules and pressures. When you do go and play with Mahjong in particular, do you ever feel that, like, when you come out, I mean, your step might be a little lighter, but do you ever feel like, wow, I really shifted something I was stuck in?
Well, for one thing, I usually, I don't feel it as strongly. The pressure or the fear or whatever it was sort of dissipates while you're in there. And I always feel like you can't make good decisions if you're, in some kind of panic or fear-based, mode of thinking. And so I always feel like when I go back to thinking about whatever it is that was on my mind, I have just a clearer way of thinking about it and feel more sense of possibility and like I can solve this. Even if I don't quite have the answer, although sometimes I do come out with an answer, I just feel more positive about, a way through. So
I know it's interesting you use the word positive, because I think that it's such a strong drug in a positive way, like positive. But like, it's amazing how manipulating it is to be influenced by bad news or by bad situations or bad spreadsheets,
Yeah.
the
Bank
prognosis.
accounts. Yeah. Yeah. It's
You
true.
know, and also, how do you handle losing a game that you really wanted to win? And these are muscles. These are really good things. But there's a lot of play that I love to nurture that is more playful than play. It's more fun than a game.
Yeah.
And these are things I'm researching a lot about. But I also feel like you mentioned something about comfort zone. And, you know, there's anything heavy handed is not going to work. But I do think if people get to know a space, a physical space, and they get to see people that they know, they might pop out of their own group and maybe start another group. They might say, this person I've been playing with is super competitive and I want to change it up. And these are all things that happen in play, that happen in real life. So there's almost like I've been playing around with this raison d'etre page on the website, talking about like what is play and why are we doing it, and what does play disrupt, what does play nurture. And I think it's a constant reminder. I think it needs to be changed all the time, and maybe that's where the newsletter that I want to create for our members is going to really plug in. Like this week, we've been thinking about this node in this philosophy. Let's talk about it a little bit. Play in this idea. Because I think if we treat ourselves all as like the scientists of our own laboratories of us, I think it could be really fun.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the self-awareness that you get from anything, from starting a business, for anything. I just really love becoming more self-aware and understanding yourself better. And I think there's just so much value in that. And I think this is kind of a different type of space to learn about yourself in, and really, really valuable. You're right. You can take all of these things, away from it. Even, you brought up my mahjong, but I don't always feel like going. A lot of times I really almost decide not to go. I don't have time, or I should be doing other things, or there's more important things to be doing, or I'm too tired, or I'm in a grumpy mood. And I go, and it always transforms. It's a lot like exercise that way. You don't feel like it, then you do it.
True.
And you feel great.
Yeah.
So,
and when you do that, I think it's also important to kind of, it's a distraction no matter how good or bad it was. And when I say distraction, I actually don't like that word. It's more about expanding your perspective. It's more about like, it's a relief. Yeah. It's a short-term relief, but it's also a recharging. So even if you had a bad game, you've given your synapses a little bit of a shift out. I learned this thing once that I think is so fascinating about perspective, that I think is I've done this with groups where, like, you have your finger up, right? And above you're holding a plate. Okay. And I say to you, spin your plate clockwise. So I'm on midnight. I'm at 12. I'm going 1, 2, 3, and I'm going around, right? As I lower my arm, but I keep the plate parallel to the floor, and it's going to be below my gaze of my eyes, I'm looking at the plate again, but the plate is going counterclockwise. So just in that move downward, the plate is going counterclockwise. And and if you do it wrong, it's going to be like this, and it changes, it stays, but you have to keep it like this all the way down, and you're changing what it was. It was clockwise, and now it's counterclockwise, just by doing one simple shift down. And it's a wonder, right? It's a wonder. It's like Dead Poet Society, when Robin Williams stood on the chair and he said, "Look down at the room. It's so different. Lie on your head. The room's upside down." Like giving yourself that playful experience just to shift out of your things. The egg timer goes off and you stand up from your chair every hour, every 20 minutes. We're taught about the ergonomics of working and shifting, but we're not always reminded that we have to shift our brains out of, and also there's this fear. I'm going through it right now, actually, this sense of like, self-doubt, fear, and, this sense of like, what if my timing doesn't work for me? What if I'm here on the axis of time and I have till this point? But isn't that what games are as well? You know, you have a certain finite time, you've got to perform inside of it. It keeps you in that playful sense. It keeps you a little more aware of like, I'm going to make a move now, and I'm going to jump and see what happens. And it might be the wrong move, but 50% of the time it's the right move. Yeah. So maybe different games is not 50, but the point I'm making is that shifting your perspective is very playful if you do it right, and it can make your life more aligned with your goals.
Yeah, I think it's very playful. I also think it's where wisdom comes from. I mean, we have to be able to shift our perspective. I think the most, unhappy people are the people who just are locked into a particular perspective and can't see anything else. And, I wonder too, when I go into, for example, Mahjong, is it the game? Is it the people? Is it just an atmosphere that is all about play versus anything else? Mm-hmm. Nobody's, it's not like we don't talk about things. We talk about health or work or kids or whatever while we're playing. But I don't really know what the answer is, or maybe it's just a combination of everything.
Right.
But it's a very healthy, interesting place to be. And, I think one of the biggest hurdles is to get over this idea that this doesn't have as much value to go sit and play as other things you could do. Mm-hmm. If you could work an extra hour, you could,
Right.
And I think that's where we make a huge mistake. And I think you've really, brought this to light for me, is when we design our days and our schedule and our calendars to, just like I've always said, people need to put a money date on their calendar. I mean, it needs to be a part of your life. It needs to be a part of your routine, checking in and being active with your money. And we really, I think we do a lot of things with our time, but we don't necessarily schedule for play. And we might schedule for exercise and,
And I think I'm working on some better vocabulary around that, because play, you don't have to ask a kid to play. They're going to play anyway. But adults have issues. And I'm thinking about like the Playful Society as its highest form for me is basically designing play for real life. It's basically saying, because we know play helps you make better choices, we know that play is a practice for life. How can we integrate play and be helpful to you so that we remember that we're human, and that, there's a world out there that's becoming more efficient with AI, but I want to make sure I value my humanity by being human, doing human things, having the license to play as a human being plays, mm-hmm. to bring that mojo to my next environment, whether it's my marriage or my work or my just recreation in a different format. And also bringing play into my faith for hope. People are always like, oh my God, the future looks so grim. If you've just have an endorphin hit from a moment of play. And remember that, again, we have to define what play is for each person. I mean, some people, Wordle is their reward, and no judgment there. It's still on a screen. It's very finite. You get it in 3 things and you're done. But I think there's degrees of play, and we want to design a life full of play, so it is a practice for your larger life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. You just brought to mind the picture of the 2 old guys in the park playing chess. For some reason, we would admire that, but I think there was this element of, okay, they're retired, they've
right.
had a hard life, now they can sit and relax and play chess. And I don't think we don't have that image of like young moms sitting around playing a game, without their kids, just with other adults. I mean, I think it's really an exercise in rethinking life, how you want to live.
It is. And I also feel like people have this idea of, well, I work out, make time for the gym. And that's, again, it's a measurement of, am I getting that thing called life right? Oh, they say I got to work out, so I'm going to work out. I got to keep my blood pressure down. I'm on the edge of having diabetes. I'm too heavy. I'm too this. And there's this like slapping on one's face. I don't know. And I try, and this is part of the incubation of the playful world, is how do we comfortably discuss what a reward system is without having these big metrics attached to it. I ran 15 miles this week. Like, great, but are you happier? Or did you relate to somebody more intimately? And again, they always say when someone's on their deathbed, it really wasn't how much games they played or how much cars they owned. It was the people they were with and what the quality of that was.
Right. Right. And I do feel like, this is an avenue toward just interacting with more people, maybe making some friends, if nothing else, having conversations you'd never have otherwise. That's kind of a thrilling thing. I've always said that's my favorite part of doing the podcast is having conversations with people I would have never met.
Yeah.
And, I always find it fascinating. And I feel like when I've been to a couple of your events and I've met really interesting people. And, sure, there's been a game going on, but things just get talked about or you have time to talk to people. And there's something that is so enriching about that. I mean, it truly, it just makes a huge, huge difference in your life. And I don't know what we're doing to get that. I remember being a kid, and there'd be somebody in the class and I'd think, oh, I want to be, her friend. And I don't know why I felt that way, but you just, and that has sort of slipped away too as you get older.
You're bringing a great point up. This is really the secret sauce that I think we have to really pay attention to and why I think playful as a space is going to be successful. You can't really invite somebody for dinner you don't really know that well. You can't invite somebody over sometimes you don't know that well. It's just awkward, but you could say, hey, it was great talking to you. By the way, I belong to the Playful Society. Come on over. I'd love to play a game with you. There's a safe place to do that. Play itself is safe because it's a paradigm that people are comfortable with because it's not about I guess you could talk about the culture of golf in the business world as being like, yeah, if I play golf with him, I'll make the deal. That's very white male centered. And it doesn't build relationship. It builds competition that's friendly, and then you leverage who won and who didn't, and everything is about power. Play is not about power. Play is about releasing yourself from the power structure and being inside your own delightful sense of goofiness and of play. And that's definitely a vibe that you can't get if you're at a chess tournament. Yes, of course we can have competitive days and competitive nights, but this is really an important moment for us to define how are we going to instill all this yummy stuff that you and I are talking about into somebody's invitation. Because the invitation is really something that I'm fascinated by, because we don't need any more life hacks. We don't need anything but this is an old technology. This is a way of come into the tent. And come play marbles. We have to remind people of it. That's my job, actually, is to say, when you were a kid, you did it. They did it more in ancient times than we do it now. Maybe not the gladiator way, but we've had some fun times as a human species.
Yeah, and I was thinking back to those times when I don't feel like going to mahjong and I force myself because usually there's some accountability involved, which is what the other thing I love about what you're doing is if somebody is a member and is paying some kind of a fee, they're more likely to show up. And unfortunately, we need that. I mean, I need people who think I'm coming to the game and they need the 4 people at the table sometimes to get me to go. And I sort of lost my thought, but I was just thinking about how that feels and my inclination, and I know I'm not alone in this, to isolate when I don't feel great versus go sit in a group. And if you're forced to not do that, it's a self-sabotaging move. I mean, sometimes, yes, we want to be alone, but most of the time, if you force yourself out of that, I don't feel good, I'm going to just stay by myself, and you go out and you sit with a group and you do something, you just can't help but feel better.
I love that you reminded me of that, because one of the funniest things about when I talk about this in a light kind of chill way, people are like, they sing the song from Cheers. And I'm like, I'm not actually trying to build the utopian space. I also think that we know people go to bars just to sit on a chair on a desk. You can't do that. You have to have a phone or a glass of beer. In our society, you just can't sit somewhere. People think it's weird. If you're really busy or you're drinking a beer, But in this world, it's like if I have I have these little blocks over there that it drives me nuts. You're supposed to make a shape out of them, and there's a little card that says "make a pyramid." I suck at it, but I play it. I have a Rubik's cube. I will never figure that out. I've gone online to learn the combinations. I am actually so bad at this stuff, but what I'm good at is sitting on a stool and just talking to somebody next to me. That's an extraordinary skill that most people don't have. That as an extrovert, I never felt weird saying, "Hey, you come here often," maybe a better line. But my point is, I have such compassion for shy people. And I think most people are shy, or they're hiding their true selves somehow. And they're just showing up in a bravado kind of way because they're overcompensating and they become like a total jerk. So I think that, again, this is why I'm looking for that physical space, is because I really want to create the Cheers space where you can just show up and say, you know what, it's 3:30 in the afternoon. I don't have a meeting again until tomorrow morning. I have to be home for dinner. Maybe I'll show up for 2 hours and do this. Now, granted, in Los Angeles, if it's not in your neighborhood, you might not do that trip. But my goal with Playful is to really build a template experience so that we can get little, 1,000 square foot spaces in 5 or 6 different parts of the city. And then we can grow, not as a franchise, but more of a licensing model where people are saying, I'd love to open up a Playful in Brentwood. How do I do it? Mm-hmm. And I say, here, do this, and license the name, and we're going to support you every step of the way. Because I don't think it's realistic to say there's one great place in LA that you can go to play games. Yeah. And one thing I want to comment on around demographic and psychographic stuff I've been studying, the retail space that are game stores, the game stores, they love having game nights, but they're very restricted to that kind of tabletop experience where it's competition or it's going into a role-playing model, but it's not a place you go just to chill and maybe not play at all. You got to go to play. Yeah. I'm interested in that hybrid that you were mentioning. Like, I want to get out. I want to do it. And I also promised my friends I'd show up and maybe I won't even play the first round. Maybe I'm in a bad mood. Maybe once I watch them play, I'll play the second round. A real quick story about somebody I was walking with who said I would never join because I don't like games. And she was important for me to talk to because I don't want to lose somebody who doesn't play games. I don't really play a lot of games. So I was like, that's so interesting that she said she wouldn't join. What's wrong with her? But then I said to her, do you enjoy, maybe working out a puzzle? She goes, yeah, puzzles don't bother me. I said, why? She goes, well, I could just kind of stare at the puzzle for a while. And that's kind of zen. I'm like, that's beautiful. Yeah. Because if there's always a puzzle going on and you just want to sit by the puzzle, you could be not really working on the puzzle, but you could be in the environment of the puzzle. Similarly, I want a corner of the place that's called In Stitches, and it's where people are knitting and embroidering, and they're also laughing, ha ha ha. Yeah. A place where you can read. So I know I'm creating like this huge space, but it's really not. We're talking about something that's open day and night, but with hours where it's more regulated towards what people have a propensity to do at that time. But I think that it's the quiet voice that I'm very interested in, is the quiet person. Not that this is a Lonely Hearts Club. I want boisterous people coming in and bouncing in and bringing their joy and their team with them. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a lot about everyone taking responsibility for the etiquette that we create, the culture we create. Mm-hmm. And again, back to the topic of the day and on your podcast, I can't tell you enough how much mindset affects people's decision making. And if you're exhausted and you're fearful, you're going to make the wrong decisions based on those emotional states. So if you're investing, or if you're trying to negotiate a salary, if you're trying to figure out what you should spend your next dime on, and you have 5 priorities, which one will you take? These are all things that should be made in a clear head. Yeah. And I think being a member of Playful and doing right by yourself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I've experienced it firsthand. I know that you're doing these events here and there, and till you kind of get a more permanent location. But you are doing it; it is happening, and people are showing up, and they're all having a really good time. So, I can't believe how fast the time went, and I know this was kind of an interesting conversation because it was very just free form and flowy, and I hope it's just made people think about whether they have any of this in their life, whether they would like to, whether they've even thought about it. I just think, sadly, we're about to embark on a new year and everybody's business planning and maybe financially planning and planning for their kids. But my guess is very few people listening have thought about planning for play. And I think you can't really underestimate the value there.
Yeah, that's well said.
So tell people how they can find you and how they can get involved.
Yes. So the ever-changing website of playfulsociety.com. It's playful is purposely spelled with two L's because it's a society full of play. So Playful Society. You can always go there and join the mailing list, join our WhatsApp group, or become a member. Right now, membership is still at $18 until the 31st, and then I'm going to switch it over. I had someone else ask me to do that. So $18 is crazy per month.
It is crazy.
Get you into all of our events, and that's going to switch to 36 in 2 days. But it's still a bargain because we're going to have weekly events and also once a Sunday. But please ask any questions, inquire. We do events at people's homes, a lot of corporate training in my past, so I will be happy to do a corporate job for you and facilitate a whole program that integrates play into your weekly schedule. I've designed that before. And also, I'm really going to start doing interactive keynotes, meaning that I'm coming to speak, but the environment is a playful one. So people are actually engaging, and I'm more down on the floor than I am up on stage. So that's something I want to do this year a lot.
I love that. And I love that for companies and for entrepreneurs who are starting their year too. I mean, what a great way to get everybody aligned with a vision and playing around that for a bit as the year kicks off, So yeah. Well,
and I want to thank you, Michelle, because I think our conversations this half year have been really monumental for me to just have a sounding board. But also, if you reflect back so well and you push me, and I think it's. And you do go back to some practical stuff, and money is a very big, for creatives like myself, solopreneurs who have done many things. We have stories in our head about success and about imposter syndrome and about, am I worthy and how do I charge? And, these are still demons in my own soul that you help exercise out on a weekly basis. So I want to just openly and transparently thank you for being that person in my life.
Well, thank you. You've been a real blessing in mine as well. You've really, it's been valuable for me to get to know you and what you're doing, and I can't thank you enough for allowing me to be part of it. So I'm very excited about it. I think it is enormously beneficial, and I know we're just about out of time, but I have to say this because as you were talking, this time that you would take for play, I think there's a real deservability issue there behind it. If you'd want to talk about mindset, and just like you were saying with the rewards, do I deserve to take 2 hours and play a game when I could be whatever? And I feel like if you have that, you probably have some deservability issues around money as well. Wow. And receiving money. And it just came to me as we wrap up that they're so tied together. And so I think it's it's worth working on wherever you're feeling it. And I think this is just another gift that you should be giving yourself, just like your ability to receive more money.
Beautiful. That's a great time. That's a great bow on this.
Well, and we have to put a bow on it, unfortunately, because we're out of time. So thank you so much for being here. And audience, please check out the Playful Society. I keep putting a "the" in front of it. It's really just playfulsociety.com.
And you can also go to the Playful Society. I got both URLs. They both go to the same place.
Smart. It's a very smart woman. And I love that because you're technologically very, very savvy. So this isn't like, oh, I don't know how to, handle technology, so I'm going to do something in real life. This is, as a tech savvy woman, you're starting something because you see the need for the real connection for people.
For sure. It was great to talk with you.
Yeah, great to talk to you too, or with you. And audience, please continue to listen to the Money and You podcast. We will, I love that we're starting the year with this. I think it's so, so important. So think about, as you do your planning, how you can incorporate more play in your life. Check out the Playful Society. And Yeah, and we will, you can find us on all the podcast platforms. I'm forgetting everything I say at the end, and then also the Limit Free Life YouTube channel, and we will see you next week.